Hey everybody, welcome back. Northernlion, Binding of Isaac Afterbirth Plus, and honestly, I know I've flip-flopped on this a few times. We'll be playing as Magdalene today. I know we've flip-flop on this a few times. The first 10 runs of this random streak have been a little touchy. By the way, he's never gonna remember that it's a speed upgrade. How about that? And I'd do it again! Over the course of the last calendar year in which the streamer had a baby, and exclusively played as the Eden character in the Binding of Isaac, he forgot the critical piece of information that Magdalene's starting pill is always a speed upgrade pill. Not from the start, but once you actually get 1001% unlocked, or once you get the Maggie's Faith Trinket unlocked. Did I forget? Did I stutter? Anyway, where am I going with this? I don't know. It's been I don't mean to be so antagonistic. Streak's been a little, it's in a good place, but there have been some runs that have been a little touch and go as time has gone on, and that's fine. If anything, you know, being tested a little bit probably keeps you fresh, as we saw with the Canadian World Junior Championship team that, you know, had an incredible run in the tournament, only to face the first good team they actually played, and then get shut out 2-0 in the gold medal match. You might say, is that burning you up, NL? No, quite the opposite. I still... You know, at the end of the day, I am a fan of Hockey Canada, but I do still... And it's irrational, for sure. But I do still resent, you know, the World Juniors 2 years ago, where they crapped the bed when the tournament took place in Vancouver. And we went to see a bunch of the games, and it was highly disappointing. So I'm not saying I wish that they would lose, which they did. I might remind you. But rather that when they lose, I'm not like, oh, this is so sad. I'm like, okay, Alberta, Red Deer, Edmonton, now you know what it's like, right? Now you understand the pain. Anyway. Moving on. Good damage upgrade. Glad I did not forget about the existence of the item room. It's a pretty important part of the run, I would say, on average. And Blood of the Martyr, pretty good item as well. Can't be mad about it. HP's great. Orbital, always nice to have. I mean, this run is kind of off to the races. What's Maggie's principal problem? Well, you know, if you forget that you start with a speed upgrade pill, that's a big issue. Potentially. And then secondarily, you know, you got lots of HP, but you don't necessarily have the stats that kind of keep the churn going. You know what I mean? You don't start with anything special, really, beyond your ability to survive, and red hearts are kind of like, I don't want to say valueless, but not as valuable once you've played a little bit more of the game. That might be a slightly... I mean, they're the most valuable resource in the entire game. But also... You know, once you have like a little bit, it's like oxygen is insanely valuable, right? But if I was to go to you and be like, hey, what would you rather have? Like 10 bitcoins or, you know, 10 liters of oxygen? You would probably be like, give me the bitcoins for now. The air's just, it's plentiful, you know? We live in a world of air abundance, at least temporarily. Anyway. So getting the HP, getting the Blood of the Martyr for a little bit of DPS, very, very nice. Now, the hardest challenge on this run is keeping my own attention span going, so that I remember on this floor, the best way for us to quote-unquote move the needle is to use our orbital only in the safest of situations, so that we don't risk taking unnecessary damage, and as a result of taking that unnecessary damage, compromise our ability to get this deal with the devil, which really is how we're going to get the momentum going on this run to capitalize on our HP. But I'm assuming at this point, you know, if you're watching Isaac, I will say I'm not to exclusively put it in economic terms, but I am ready to officially declare the end of the Isaac bear market. It has been a record length of Isaac, let's just say a little pessimism about the state of the Isaac game, and it's not necessarily meant to be like overly negative. The game didn't get any worse. It was just a very long period where there was no new content, and no news on new content, and then like, you know, repentance, we guarantee. I don't know if they ever said guarantee. I shouldn't stoke that kind of fire, but it seemed like there was a sentiment that's like it'll probably be out in like 2019, and then now it's like 2021, and you're like, okay. But they have announced that release date, March 31st. You can start to see the little glimmer of hope pop into the Isaac fans' cerebral cortexes. The Isaac streamers are starting to play the game again. They're starting to get hyped for solving new mysteries. It's happening. It's happening. Our long Isaac nightmare is over. Can't get into that item room though. Never mind. I'm declaring it's an Isaac recession still. Never mind. Everything's great. But yeah, I'm excited. I think it's easier. You know, I'm glad they didn't announce a release date. Yes, I will. I'm glad they didn't announce a release date really and then skip it. Like I know that, or miss it, I should say. I know that a lot of people were mistakenly under the impression that December 31st date was actually going to be the real date. And, you know, who do I blame for that? I honestly, don't be mad, but I blame the consumer, as I always do. Because they did tweet in correspondence that it's gonna be, that's just a placeholder date. Why did they put a placeholder date in the first place? That's a good point, I actually don't know. Because on Steam you can't, but who cares, okay? What I was gonna say is on Steam you can place, you know, a date that's like TBA 2022. You could even type in like when it's ready, etc., etc. But I don't think it's an argument that really... Like one of my, again, like I've got 1,000 resolutions in 2021, which I actually think is fairly like honest, right? Like there's no rule that says you can only try to improve like, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 things in your life in 2021. You know, I think we've all got a lot of areas in which we could foresee ourselves improving, so why not stack up, you know, 75 New Year's resolutions, you know? It probably makes you less likely to hit each individual one, but... really, it's more just being mindful of, like, the changes you want to make. And one of the changes I want to make is being, like, way less... and my time on YouTube has really informed this opinion and attitude of mine. Way less receptive to arguments that have no purpose. Now, you might say, NL, that's your brand. To which I say, it really has not been for a long time, actually. It's not really, like, what we do anymore, for the most part. In fact, some of the shows, and people, you know, they get different things out of the NLSS. Everybody gets something different out of the NLSS, right? But some of my least favorite shows that we've done have been shows where I really feel like we're not all on the same page, and some people are kind of running off an old NLS playbook, which is like, or NLSS playbook, which is be needlessly antagonistic for the purposes of entertainment. Now, of course, those would not be my favorite shows because most of the time the entertainment comes at what I would perceive as my expense. But the audience might be like, Pog, the streamer's being, he's being browbeaten. Pog, this is what I watch for. But I think, you know, we've hit on a more, I don't know, kind of like a mellow, almost like car talk kind of vibe lately. And obviously the show's kind of in flux while we figure out what we're doing with this new time schedule. Which, by the way, again, like, I don't know what you, and this will come across like venting. I don't really mean it this way. It's more of just like an administrative note. If you're wondering why, you know, like, you know, Josh hasn't been on the show, yeah, that's his private business, you know? People will show up in my chat and be like, what the heck, no Josh? Josh fired? You know, no, he's not fired. But, like, I'm not him. We're on great terms. We talk in the back channel all the time. He's just had other stuff going on. But, moreover, just kind of like a weird energy that, like, you know, you might have some real stuff going on in your life. And if that precludes you from being on the show, it's just, like, even more stressful for everybody else involved. Because people are making jokes about it in the chat without, like, having any understanding of what may or may not be going on at all. But even, like, beyond that, for a more selfish reason, I'm like, I'm not Josh. Don't come to me and be like, you know, where's Josh? You know, they don't tweet him either, you know? Like, he's got his own life, but simultaneously, like, You know, people will come to me and be like, you know, why hasn't X person been on the show lately? I'm like, I don't know. Let me use my Professor Xavier. Let me open up Cerebro. And instead of being entertaining, let's spend like the first 20 minutes of the show doing administrative notes, where instead of cracking jokes, we just go through a laundry list of like, well, you know, this person's at summer camp right now. This person, you know, went to a farm upstate, etc., etc. Like this, come on, man. That's not what we're here for. But yeah, I mean, so I mean, this kind of ties into it, you know. I really think that like the more time I spend on the internet, the more. Let me give you my perspective of this, because I think it'll actually. And I don't want this to be an inside baseball episode, because we've done maybe too much of that lately. And moreover, like when you know, we've made like a little change in our Twitch schedule. It's actually like a pretty major change. Let's not misrepresent it by saying it's, you know, so minor. But you know, there's been feedback both positive and negative, and I read all of it because I'm, you know, I have a vested interest, but also because I'm a masochist and I'm a glutton for punishment. And, you know, in some ways I feel that because I have, like, this awesome job, that the cosmic scales of fairness and justice are only tipped if I punish myself by reading the absolute worst feedback about myself at a regular basis. But that's a problem for another. Maybe 2022 we'll talk about that one. But I've like... Let me give you my perspective. So there's been, like... Spelunky 2 episodes have gone from being bespoke recorded for YouTube. I mean, we did 110 plus episodes bespoke recorded for YouTube, and then, you know, as the demands of the time demands of the baby have become a little bit more, you know, they've forced me to alter my workflow a little bit to be what I would describe as more efficient, which is two things. It's like, you know, yes, like you look at the bottom line and you say, you know, what's the best use of my time so that I can, you know, keep doing this and maximize, you know, not feel like I'm wasting any time. That I could be doing something more valuable with, not just like on a professional level, but also like, you know, helping to take care of the baby more, and spend time with the baby more, you know, because it's my family. But also like, what do people like to see the most? So, you know, when you get to the point where you're like, what, you look at the analytics to some extent, and you're like, okay, new content's doing really well, and we could keep cycling in like new content on the regular, and Spelunky 2 is in kind of like the sunset. For now. Eventually they'll come out with the Seasons Pass, DLC, new maps, etc., etc. A Battle Pass. Maybe they'll go free to play. Mobile version, so on and so forth. But it's kind of sunsetting a little bit. So I looked at that and I was like, you know what? It would probably be relatively harmless for us to start doing Spelunky 2 on stream instead. Don't cancel it outright. Start doing it on stream instead to kind of like... you know, still give people the content that they want, and then push the VOD to YouTube so the people who only watch on YouTube and are categorically opposed to watching anything on Twitch will still have something. Now, I was wrong. Most people are, like, pretty okay with it, and some people were not so okay with it, and then I explained my position, and they're like, now I get it. And some people are, like, vehemently opposed to it. So I've been, like, soliciting a lot of feedback over it. What I've learned is that, like, I have to put myself in the shoes of the audience a little bit more, because here's a situation that, like, happens a lot. I'll end up, let's not call it an argument, but I'll end up getting in, like, a discussion about it for, like, you know, 15, 20 minutes on my Discord, and people will appear that they have very strong opinions, right? They'll be like, I think this because of this, you know, and which is the way that you talk, you know, especially if you're trying to persuade somebody. And then I get, like, let's not call it upset, but emotionally invested, because, like, for people that watch the content is not necessarily their life, nor should it be for that matter. But it's just, like, it's my life, you know, and we'll definitely take this item. So you gotta remember, like, the criticism that you levy, perhaps, and it's not to say you shouldn't be able to be critical, but, you know, also you can understand maybe why the content creator would be a little bit more, they would take it personally, because it's about them, and, it, you know... Again, this is my life, you know? For you, you know, you dabble in the Spelunky videos, you know, maybe for 40 minutes every other day or something like that. And for me, I wake up thinking about, like, you know, what am I going to record today? And, you know, soliciting feedback from dozens of people, maybe more sometimes, depending on how badly something has been received. So I'm, like, living it. So we'll have these discussions for 15 or 20 minutes, and I'll plead my case. And then sometimes, like, people will just be like, oh, okay, like, just do whatever you want. I don't really care that much anyway. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't really care that much? You wrote, like, an essay. And I think that that's very instructive for me. And I hope it doesn't come across negatively. But I have realized... I mean, there's no way to say it without it sounding, like, slightly smarmy, I guess. But, like people will really, like, argue about stuff almost as, like, what I would describe as, like, an exercise in argument. Because they find the... You know, they do have an opinion about something, but it turns out that really they're also just kind of entertained by the fight, if that makes sense, or by the debate. I find myself less entertained about the debate, but that's probably because, again, the debate is about me and my workflow, you know? So I think that's something I'm kind of coming to terms with for sure. In 2021, my goal is to... let's just describe it as, like, be less of... get baited less. That's pretty fair. People don't want to admit they get baited. My baited ratio is pretty low. Like, I get baited a lot, but I think I also have a lot of comments that consciously or unconsciously, like, try to bait me. So I feel like it's much like sponsorship offers. Like, I decline, like, at least 80% of the comments I see that offer me the opportunity to get baited. But it does still happen, of course. You realize that not all of the bait is even mean-spirited. Like, sometimes it's just people that are like, here's my opinion and I feel strongly about it. And then you get in an argument about it and they're like, you know, actually I didn't feel that strongly about it at all. And you're like, okay, so this was just pretty much like a colossal waste of both of our time. So I'm trying to do something right by me and do something right by the audience in that respect as well. But anyway, like I've said it before in the Isaac stuff, new schedule's going very well. I'm having a good time with it. The Spelunky stuff is kind of, it's like a pressure point right now. We'll figure it out, you know, or we won't, and we'll replace the Spelunky 2 content with something that maybe works a little bit better, or we'll, you know, pull back a stream day at some point and then, you know, be able to put out more bespoke YouTube content, and, you know, like, you get the idea. Like, it's a constant, it's a constant learning process. When you start a new college course, they don't ask you to take the final exam on day one. You know, they give you 12 weeks to learn the material, a midterm to fail, and then get, you know, very scared about, you know, whether or not you're going to be able to complete your degree on time, and then all of a sudden you cram for the final, you get yourself a little B-, and you get the heck out of the class, vow that it will never happen again, and then have the exact same thing happen again starting from October of the following school year. You know, it's a constant, it's cyclical. It goes in phases. But yeah, I mean, and the other reason we talk about Inside Baseball a lot is because, like, I mean, there's nothing else, like, really going on right now. The baby, she poop. She laugh, she smile, she pee. Yes, very true. Very true. So it's, I apologize for sure, but it is, you know, and you know, I've said it 2,000 times, but, it's natural. You know, you gotta speak about what you know, and when you, I mean, I've literally, I think I've left the house, like, 0 times in January, I think. 0 times. We now, like, it's gone from, like, when was the last time I left the house, to, like, looking forward to leaving the house, but not even, like, tomorrow. Like, sometimes I'll be like, oh, this week we have, like, an appointment. That's crazy. Like, I can't possibly leave the house before the appointment, but then, like, in 4 days, I get to experience, like, real vitamin D from the sun, you know? It's, which, by the way, can you imagine if this feedback, or if this commentary was broadcast, like, in 2019? You would be like, what the heck happened? It would be, you would be more, let's not, you know, try to ruffle any feathers, but I think you would be more scared than you probably should be. You would be like, there's been some kind of, like, nuclear winter, like, AI uprising, the machines have... Or, no, wait, the machines didn't block out the sun in the Matrix. It was the human beings who blocked out the sun. How ironic. As long as we're talking about... Genius choice. As long as we're talking about, you know, the 1999 film The Matrix, really, really bad decision by humanity to block out the sun. Like, I know it's a desperate situation. The machines are uprising. They're driven by solar power. You're like, you know what? Let's create a little shade here. Not a good choice, let me say. Not a good choice, because, I mean, like, I have to imagine that after they, you know, thought about doing that, didn't like... Hey, nothing wrong with that. Did nobody go, hey, what about, like, the photosynthesis? You know, what about, like, all of the, like, plant matter that essentially serves as, like, the foundation for all the calories that we eat as human beings? You know, because, and I'm probably preaching to the choir here, but, you know, you're like, I'll just eat, like, meat. And you're like, well, yeah, but what do you think the meat eats to become meat, you know? It's gotta eat some plants at some point. What about all the fresh air that you want to breathe? This is 2 pretty good items here. I feel like the administration that was in power in the fictional world of the Matrix, they might not have had humanity's best ideals in mind. Wouldn't you say? That's how it sounds to me. Honestly, I feel like maybe it was like an android that was in power. Maybe we should blot out the sun because they use solar power. Hey, great idea, President T-1000. Ha ha ha. This will show them. Robot impression is like, it's too easy. I don't deserve any props for a robot impression. Why is that I don't even understand why that's the universal... Dude, we're really getting the right items here by just taking the item on the right. That's like such an antiquated idea of what a robot would sound like. At least now it should be like the British text-to-speech guy. The text-to-speech from Twitch donations and also AI Dungeon. Thank you so much, streamer, for your incredible stream today. 77777777777. You know, you get the idea. If you don't watch Twitch, it's a reference to Twitch culture. I apologize. I'll keep them at a minimum. We might as well. We don't care too much about we don't care too much about the High Priestess here. Like, we're doing amazingly on damage. Damage stat is good. Rate of fire stat is like twice what it was a couple of floors ago. We're feeling very solid right now. I mean, I really, especially with 6 HP, you know, a Bone Heart, I don't really see how this run could possibly collapse at this point. Especially if you get a very nice deal with the Devil here, for example. But, you know, let's not get overly confident. I almost threw that Azazel run. That was like 5 videos ago. But I will also say, and we don't need to talk too much about Isaac, but like, I feel like you bake in a little bit of an Azazel, a little bit of danger. Okay, thank God that is the Polaroid. I decided to just trust my instincts about which one was which, but yeah, I feel like on almost any Azazel run, let's put it this way, most Isaac runs follow like a curve where they start somewhat weak and then get proportionally stronger over the run. I would even say disproportionately stronger. You know, they tend to get... The rate of their increase in strength tends to grow as the run proceeds, you know? Like, almost like parabolic growth. Or well, I don't know. I guess it's not really exponential, but like, people get very anal about that. You know what I mean? It's not linear growth, let's put it that way. Azazel's like the opposite. I feel like if Azazel were mapped on an XY graph, an XY plane, if you will, the Y-intercept of Azazel's power is higher than any other character. So when time equals 0, Azazel's power is at its relative strongest, and then as the run goes on, it tends to disproportionately, not diminish, but get outscaled by the rest of the game. Now, you might say, who cares? You would be absolutely in the right. All I would say in this case is, this is the kind of commentary you should come to expect from a series that has reached its 3,000th episode, is like, you know, they start to sound more like, you know, PhD thesis defenses, you know? A quantitative analysis of Isaac characters' relative strengths and growth rates, you know? Like, that's Be like, shut up and talk about more movies. I haven't seen any more movies, okay? They're not coming out with that many. Kind of. Aren't there... We're, like, getting new media, right? I thought there was, like, noteworthy new media coming out in February. Like, some of those Disney Plus Marvel shows are coming out. I know, like, no, Marvel. Dude, are you crazy? Like, we have nothing else this year. It's been like a... Well, I shouldn't say it's been a year since there's been no television. I'm just saying, like, you know... People, they're so starved for any form of media right now that, like, you know, when Wonder Woman 1984 came out, people were like, it's kind of bad. And everyone was like, oh, sick, I can't wait to watch it. Just to be part of the zeitgeist. So, like, it's, you know, as long as we're talking 2021 resolutions, I think helping to retire, you know, some degree of cynicism about meaningless stuff like media, for example, it helps out a lot. But even then, I mean, it's not even so much like a resolution, I guess. It's more just kind of like... You ever feel, and I apologize because this part is going to rub some people the wrong way. You know, I have a lot of viewers that have been around for a long time. They've been around for, like, you know, 5, 8, etc. years. All of the numbers, 5 and 8. Either way. I do sometimes feel, though, that, like, you know, as people get older, I'm not going to say they tend to watch YouTube less. I would say people who are older now watch a lot less YouTube. Well, I mean, my mom watches a ton of YouTube. Now, but it's just not in the gaming space. But I feel like people who are older now, there's probably a negative correlation with the amount of time they spend watching YouTube. But I feel like people who, like, are my age right now may watch more YouTube as they get older because this was, like, it's contemporaneous with their generation, you know? I don't know if it's necessarily true that 60-year-olds are, you know, predisposed to watch less YouTube than... I think we want nothing. Maybe I'm insane. If we want nothing, we definitely don't want the coat hanger to kind of store some value for tiers if we break our cap later, but... anyways, like, what I'm saying is I don't think it's necessarily true, and I might have disagreed with myself on this even a couple of years ago, but I think YouTube is kind of like... It's established itself not as, like, an alternative form of entertainment. It's part of, like, the establishment now, right? So, like, people, even if you're, you know, 80 years old... They're not like, oh, I don't watch YouTube. You know, probably a smaller proportion are. But, you know, they're like, oh, I watch YouTube, but maybe I'll watch, like, different stuff. Maybe I'll watch, like, gardening content or, like, historical content or whatever. But I do sometimes feel like I get older, but, like, I age 1 year every year. But my audience on YouTube ages, like, slightly slower. How does that make sense? Well, I feel like demographically, like... It actually makes sense pretty easily if you think about it. Older viewers are probably a little bit more likely to wash out as they find themselves with other demands on their time, which I completely understand. Still offended, but I understand. And once you've cut out literally every other form of entertainment, every other streamer, every other television channel, eventually, like, I guess I gotta go. I'm sure I held out for a long time. I appreciate it, but... okay, and moving on. And then the audience of people coming in is a little bit more likely to be slightly younger because they got a little bit more time. You know what I mean? And not universally, but on average. Wonder if these will all get sucked in. Look at that wombo combo right there. Incredible. We're still learning new stuff. And I as a result, combined with the fact that I think, and this is, like, admittedly very ego-driven, but I feel like some YouTubers are kind of in a state of arrested development where they're, like, you know, getting older, they're in their 30s or even their 40s, but they kind of behave and have the values of, like, a younger cohort, if that makes sense. I, on the other hand, have always aspired to be, like, a man who wears suspenders to school. So I think as I've gone older and or as I've gotten older and leaned into that tendency more, you know, I find myself both aging, like, you know, literally, but also, like, psychologically faster than the proportion of the audience, especially, like, on the internet, right? So what that means to me is I think the older I get, the less the more, you know, stuff changes with respect to meaning. You know, I've said this a plethora of times in the past. But like, I don't really care what music you listen to. I don't really care, you know, to a large extent what movies you like. You know, I don't know why I said to a large extent. Like, I'm like, well, if you just watch the Zapruder film over and over, you're dead to me. But, you know, as I get older, I care even less about it. Because, like, even, like, 2 years ago, if somebody was like, oh, you like this movie? That's bad. I probably would respond and be like, actually, it's good. Now I would respond and be like, whatever, dude, get a life. I don't want to argue for the rest of my days about, you know, a movie you like is actually good, movie you like is actually bad. What a waste of our time, you know? I could be looking deep into my daughter's eyes and going, and she goes, ooh, and I go, that's right. How about ah? And then she goes, ooh, again, and I go, pretty close. Maybe next time. And then I go, ah, and she goes, ah, and I go, what? That totally wasn't a completely unrelated cry. She said it, she said ah. You know, it's just like, it's not that I'm like, oh, my time's too valuable to spend on, like, YouTube, you know? Is that my time is too valuable to be spent, like, defending myself from, like, bad faith, baited arguments about just, like, you know, hey, NL, did you know, I don't like the Winter Soldier? Okay, by all means, like, don't like the Winter... For someone who, I mean, like, maybe, like, talk more about the stuff that you like, man. You won't shut up about the stuff that you hate. We all know you're the guy who hates the Winter Soldier. What do you like? Oh, wait, let me think about it. I never thought about that before. Like, come on, man. We can start this sea change online of being... I'm allergic to, like, the toxic kind of positivity. That's like, oh, a meteor's headed towards Earth, but on the bright side, this could be a really good opportunity for us to get a fresh start, you know? I am definitely the guy who's like, oh, a meteor's headed towards Earth. You know, let's try to, like, come to terms with our inevitable extinction, but, you know, I'm not, like, trying to look on the bright side of that kind of cataclysmic event, right? I'm not one of those guys who's just, you know, boundlessly positive in the face of everything. But I think the internet could stand to be a little bit more positive for sure. And again, I think I mentioned this. It was either in Isaac or on stream, but when people are negative and you call them out for being negative, they go like, can you blame me? Have you looked at the news lately? And I'm like, yeah, I can. I mean, like, yeah, I blame you, honestly. Like, I understand, you know, you're responding to the environmental conditions we're living in, but also, like, I'm not saying put a smile on that face no matter what. I'm just saying, you know, you are in control of, you know, the attitude you put out into the world. And I feel like we've let people get away with negativity baselessly for too long, just as a result of the fact that there's, like, you know, bad news in the world. Oh my god, Tomo's trying to beat the door down. Okay, Tomo. Alright, Tomo, come on in. Welcome, buddy. He's like, meow, and then I put it through the cat translator, and he's like, the Justice League Snyder Cut is better than Infinity War. Tomo, come on, man. It's not even out yet. How could you possibly know that? Anyway. So, I don't know. Like, that's... I hope this didn't come across like a negative episode. It's like... I feel like I recognize, you know, I'm trying to think of the best way to contextualize it. I'm actually feeling, like, awesome about the schedule change, and I think it's been a huge positive. And, like, the only way you see new content that isn't just me playing the same 3 games over and over again is to give myself a little bit more freedom with the schedule, honestly. And this is kind of a means to an end to make that happen. And so far, you know, both the comments and the numbers kind of bear that out, obviously. Now, the flip side of that is the people who were, like, you know, really into bespoke Spelunky episodes made specifically for YouTube are kind of like, wait, what? I was all for these new changes, and now I realize they're kind of at my expense. Which is why I'm not saying, F you, don't be critical. Instead, I'm just saying, everybody just chill out. You know, we're going to figure it out together. It's been good. Let's try to channel that positive energy into something, you know, good and productive. But anyway... For now, thanks for watching. Hope you guys have enjoyed the episode. If you did, click the like button. Helps out a great deal. Of course, subscribe if you want to see more in the future. For now, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. See ya!